I think that going back to what we were talking about earlier, especially kind of what I was talking about earlier, that for better or for worse, name recognition plays a lot
Oh
to
yeah,
do with it. If you look back in 2004, the games that you were talking about, Kyle, the non-conference games that USC, Oklahoma, and Auburn played, as far as non-conference games, USC probably had the best out of all those teams, of course, obviously. But then, of course, Oklahoma was picked over Auburn because if you look at their non-conference, those teams weren't ranked. Bowling Green, Houston, or Oregon, they weren't ranked. But, a name like Oregon, since the at least mid-'90s, beating Oregon's kind of a big deal if they're ranked or not. So name recognition plays a lot more to it than
and I think 2004, you kind of hope that in 2004 that, and I don't mean to harp on Auburn, so, and don't be sending me Facebook hate mail, but when you talk about schools in the SEC, Auburn has been one of those schools since those USC beatdowns that kind of shied away from going out to play those tough teams. People remember when they canceled from Florida State. No, we can't play them. And they canceled from Georgia Tech. And then they were supposed to play in the Chick-fil-A Classic actually a few years earlier. Then of course they got it this year to open up the season, but it's supposed to play it a few years earlier, and we don't quite want to do that. And they supposed to got South Florida where South Florida ended up being good and ended up beating them in Jordan Hare. So Auburn has been one of those teams that have they been in that position the last few years, it would have killed them again.
Well, and I think what's funny is building off that. The last time that Auburn went on the road and won a non-conference BCS road game? It was 1997 against Virginia. That's the last time. And I'm not picking on Auburn, and I think what you're hitting at is a good point. It's, look, when you only have two spots and there's three of you, you better have a better resume than the other two. But I think that's why a lot of people don't want the +1. It's because what it's almost saying is it's okay. Play a weaker conference schedule than the other teams. Because think about it. Look at Florida and Ohio State and Michigan. Florida had who? Southern Miss, Central Florida, Western Carolina, Florida State. Ohio State had Northern Illinois, Texas, Cincinnati, Bowling Green. Who did Michigan have? Vanderbilt, Central Michigan, Notre Dame, and Ball State. Now people will point out, well, it's not fair. Ohio State and Michigan had to play each other. Yes, but if Florida would have lost that championship game against Arkansas, they would have played each other again.
Yeah.
You can't fault Florida for saying, I'm playing just as good a schedule as you are, and I just happen to lose at the right time, or I'm picking it up. But with that being said, does that mean that if we go to a playoff, does it solve everything?
No, because I think the thing that you run into in the playoffs is things that we run into at the Division I AA level and all the other levels. You get that team who was on the outside looking in, that team who maybe had that 9-2 season, and non-conference won strong. I'll take you back 2006, my senior year at Southern. We finished the season 9-3. Finished the season ranked in the top 10. We did at the end of the season. We watched people play on TV because our conference had, said that we're not going to participate in the playoffs. So that was pretty much a non-factor. And we finished second in the division to Arkansas Pound Bluff, a team that we beat 31-10. But due to the fact we were their only conference loss, they only had one conference loss, we had two. They come to Birmingham, and we go home. So even when you do it the playoff, you're still going to have people complaining, we did this, we did that, and we didn't get in. So you're not going to be able to solve the problems for all the people. But like I said, you can make it better, and I think you can do that with the +1.
Well, and Matt, as you being a fan, do you think a playoff would help, or do you think it'd be, no, it's just burnout, it's too much?
I think it's burnout. And, if you're just an overall football fan, not just college football, but football in general, it bleeds over into the NFL, or it would bleed over in the NFL probably more than you'd want. As far as the playoffs concerned, I'm a huge basketball fan as well as football fan. I have to kind of agree with what Brandon was saying, is that you look at these options and compare them all. I like the current format. I think it's pretty good. You take the +1 and then you move the argument is from, well, I was at least one of the 2 best teams to, well, I was one of at least the 4 best teams. If you take it to a playoff, you have a team that's either I think I should have been the 8th best team or the 16th best team, and they're not. They're on the outside looking in. So you're never going to make everybody happy. And I think the playoff it bumps that down. I don't think it necessarily even gives us the best champion. It gives us a little bit more parity. Now, if you like parity in sports, then maybe the playoffs for you. But I don't think that in college football there's a place for parity. I think in the NFL, where there's 32 teams, everybody likes to see the Saints win once in 60 years. I think that everybody likes to see teams like the 49ers or the Cowboys or the Packers come back with a vengeance and have a good run. But when it comes to college football, everybody, you have your teams, you have your regional teams, the teams that you graduated, from that college. But let's face it, everybody's a fan of one of the big teams. In the Southeast, one of the SEC teams, Alabama, Auburn, Tennessee. You have a lot of USC fans, Oklahoma fans, out west, and everybody's a fan of specific teams, if you went there or not. One of my best friends when I was growing up moved from Oklahoma. His family, they didn't go to Oklahoma, but they were Oklahoma fans. So that's just the way it is.
Well, and I think the thing is, and by the way, I wanted to say thank you to Henry Davis and David Croswell for posting this on our Facebook page. Henry Davis brought up a good point. He says, well, go ahead and do it, because then all the SEC haters will stop, because when we start winning then, we'll be good. But David Croswell brought up a good point after that. He doesn't think it'll happen anyway, because even if they start losing and the SEC starts winning all the playoffs, they'll start saying, oh, well, if you did it this way. And I think that's a good point, is you don't want to have it where eventually there's so many teams in the playoff that really it wasn't who was the best, it was who just turned it on at the right time.
Who got on a run.
Yeah.
That's the thing, is who really got on the run. You end up having, a great Cinderella story. Everybody loves the Cinderella, especially in college basketball. But I don't think that translates into college football. I really don't.
I think it all depends on the area that you are. Most people down here will tell you I'm sick of Boise State. I'm sick of TCU. You go outside of the Southeast, and people are in love with them. And there might be a little bit of SEC hate, just another night to fight the big mighty SEC. But I'm one of those people. I don't have a dog in the fight when it comes down to Alabama, Auburn, and anyone else. I kind of like to see those guys get up in there and mix it up a little bit. So I'm not saying that we should just give them a chance, because our little guys feel like they need to earn their keep like everyone else.
I think it jumps over that line of being an underdog, which everybody loves the underdog in college football, but it turns the underdog into the Cinderella.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you think about it, Boise State, TCU, Utah, they're not underdogs anymore.
No, not at all, not anymore.
So, and I think that's what's funny is it's funny, they were criticizing the system that made them who they are. Now they're part of the system because they're part of the big conferences, and you don't hear them talking as much anymore. Now you'll hear Boise State say, I don't think it's fair that we lost one game and we didn't get into the national title game. But people will point to him. Yeah, but you look at who you're playing. Even if Boise State would have gone undefeated this year, there's a lot of people that said Stanford, Oklahoma State would have still gone ahead of them with one loss because they play a little bit tougher schedule. The question I have is how much of this is really, a lot of people thinking, hey, it's the AP, it's ESPN. They want to decide who plays, because think about it, guys. Since 1934, the AP's been crowning a national champion. They're still doing it. Mm-hmm. Here's the question I have. If we go to a playoff, does the AP have to stop crowning a national champion? And if they do you think they're going to give that up?
Oh, no. An AP is not going to give that up.
AP can't. No. They don't have to. Nobody can make them give that up.
Yeah.
So then if that's the case, why is it everybody says if we go to a playoff, it'll solve everything? Well, no. As long as you have one entity that says, no, I will crown whoever I want to crown, and it could be different. Remember this year, what was it Gary Danielson was saying? I think even if Alabama beats LSU, you crown LSU the national champion, because then it'll stick it in the face of the BCS and they'll have to fix it.
I think with the money that's being made on college football, do you really want the NCAA to get their hands in on it? Because if you go to a playoff, that's what you're going to have. No longer with the bowl tie-ins and all that. That won't matter. And now it's an NCAA sanctioned event. NCAA wants their cut, and then we'll determine how much out of that cut you're going to get. The colleges are not going to give up that money to the NCAA. And you know what? I don't blame them because I know what the NCAA is to me. They're the biggest pimps on the face of the earth. They say one thing in one hand and do the complete opposite on the other end.
Thanks,
we talk about
yeah.
I mean the NCAA. We talk student athlete on this. Talk about how much money we make on this, and then we'll suspend the kid for getting groceries outside his door because you know what? That's an illegal benefit.
Well, and I think that to kind of wrap up our discussion on playoffs, I think that's really the big negative to it is that I really don't think that it benefits the student athlete. Like I said, I look at it from a fan standpoint. It does elongate it a little bit more than we really want it to be, but from a student athlete standpoint, it's really not fair to the student athlete. You're milking all it's worth.
And you know what it reminds me of? We've all played basketball. How many times did you play basketball in your backyard against the kid down the street, and he would run his mouth that he could beat you, and you would beat him? And well, if you did this, and it's like they had to keep changing the set rules of the game so they could get a chance to win. But the thing about it, guys, we've covered a lot on the BCS. But the one thing I think that we all can agree on is it a perfect system? No. But as Brandon pointed out, as you pointed out, Matt, we've all pointed out, there is no perfect system. The system we've got now works great because why? It's what you did throughout the year. And as one coach we all know, Coach Newton used to say, there's only 2 teams that get a chance to play for the championship. You better make sure you're one of those 2 teams.
That's right.
Well, now, and I guess we're just going to leave it there for the BCS talk. Now, on to my 2 cents. Basically what this is, we get 1 minute to kind of talk about something that really just we don't like. And we want to figure out, this is how we feel. My 2 cents is this. There's another bill that's trying to be presented before Congress to have any professional or collegiate team remove mascot if it is of a Native American descent. The reason I think this is so dumb is because there are 432 mascots if you take the NBA, the NFL, the NHL, you take and college basketball. 15 of them out of the 432 have Native American mascots. That's 3%. But there are 53% have animals. 28% have a white mascot, whether it's a Trojan, a Spartan, doesn't matter. What I think is the reason I don't like this is because I don't like this for the sole purpose of when you have tribes like the Seminole tribe or the Utes, think of how much exposure it brought to them. With you telling them to take them away before long, nobody's going to know anything about the Indians except from history class, and who the hell pays attention in that? So I think they need to have more Native American mascots, not less. Of course, that's just my 2 cents.
My 2 cents. March Madness, everyone's talking about the one and done. When you think one and done, who do you think? Kentucky. This is my thought on the one and done rule. If you have a kid, and that kid's in high school, and he's one of the best composers of music, do you tell that kid, hey, no, you can't compose music and make millions of dollars. We want you to go to college for at least a year. If you have a kid that is a great architect, and he's ahead of his years. I know architects usually go to school, but let's say this kid is just unbelievably gifted. Do you tell him, hey, you need to go to school to figure out what you want to do with your life, and then you can go into architecture? So why are we doing this with basketball players? You have some of these kids that have a gift, an amazing gift. And let's look at it. Let's be real. A lot of these kids come out of not the most easiest socio-economic backgrounds. So you tell them, not only can you not provide for your family right now, but we want you to waste the school's time. Get rid of the one and done rule. Let the kids go straight to the NBA and make their dollars.
I want my architects to go to college. So anyway, my 2 cents. Recently, the athletic director at North Carolina came out and said that he would be a proponent for the NCAA basketball tournament expanding to 128 teams. My 2 cents is that is a bad idea. In fact, I would be a proponent to mark it down back to 64. Get rid of the playing games. Or even better, let's knock it back down to 32. Let's make it mean something again, guys. That's the thing, is that there's so much, like I said, parity in college athletics we were talking about earlier. That's something that we could really get rid of. Coaches, they get on the hot seat if you don't make it in 64. If you don't make it in 32, kind of removes the turnover. It gives a little bit of consistency. I think it helps the student athlete. Gives you a little bit more to look forward to in making the top 32.